little something I'm tinkering with. It's like the baby doll's been helping me. It's some plumber porn, but it's something that's been a long time coming. We have not had any filtration on our house, period. We run on a well, and the water it tastes fine. It's perfectly fine and clean as far as I'm concerned, but we do get a little bit of a really fine sand that comes up in the water that's just enough. You fill a bucket up, you'll see it settle on the bottom, but it's not rust, it's nothing nasty, but it will make it a bucket of water will look cloudy, you know, for a moment, and then it will settle out. So anyway, we're finally going to put on some filtration, and I'll just kind of explain the logic to you here, and then we'll take it out. Well, this is all dry fitted right now, nothing's glued, but we're going to go out and we're going to kind of just test fit things. But basically the idea is parallel filters. Obviously we've got 1.25 inches coming in from the well, and we've got 1.25 inches going out to the pressure tank and onto the house. The reason we ran 2 filters in parallel really was just because they have a 1-inch inlet, and I didn't want to in any way restrict the flow through this system. So we'll actually let it, you know, it'll increase. So it's 1.25 inches, it splits to 2 1 inches, and then merges back together to 1.25 inches on the downstream side. In the future, when we build the main house, we will tie into the same downstream outlet. And so that's why I said I really don't want to have anything at all that restricts flow through the filtration in the pump house. In addition, I've added in a little 3/4 inch outlet here, which will give us a hose bib pre-filter, and also 1.25 inch future stub, which will give us an outlet if we say we want to run 1.25 inch to the barn or something and it doesn't have to be filtered. It gives us that outlet option. So again, past the filters, what we'll do in the future outside the pump house, we'll put a buried box in the yard, and we'll have a valve manifold in there to send water off to the main house. And at that point, we'll be able to put in valves there if we want to too, for if we want to have filtered water run to the barn or to a workshop or something like that. But I just want to go ahead and build in this optionality here that we'll have this outlet, like I said, for sort of unfiltered water in large volume, and we'll have our unfiltered water with a hose bib just for running, you know, lawn sprinklers or whatever. So will we ever use it? I have no idea, but now's the time to put it in. So let's carry this out here to the pump house. We'll stick it up against the wall and see how it looks. Okay, so we got our unit all glued up now. The 2 side outlets here, this is not glued yet, and this is not glued yet, so those 2 pieces will come off. And what that's going to let us do is just have an easier, smoother install. So the system is draining down right now. I've got the valve closed going to the house, so I'm not draining the whole house. I've got a little bit of pressure storage in the house that way. Not a lot. Maybe some back pressure kind of through the water heater or whatever, but not really by design. But more than anything, it's just so I drain back a little bit less volume. Anyway, tank's draining down right now. It's been draining down. It's amazing how long it takes to drain this thing. You think it would go relatively quickly, but as that air pocket expands, it just takes longer and longer, it seems like. So anyway, once the tank's bled off to 0 and stops running, first step's going to be to reach in there and make a cut back there. I'm hoping I get to cut just this side of that coupling, well, over about 1 inch, so I don't have to then go back. Otherwise, I'm going to have to try to reach behind the tank to cut behind that coupling, which is going to be very difficult to get in there with a Sawzall, maybe impossible. So hopefully I can cut right in front of the coupling, or to the left, and then I'll install this first part of this wing, and then of course slip on the filter housing section and slip on this section, and then the only thing left to tie in will be our water coming inlet, which I've got. When I cut this loose, I can swivel this on the wellhead, so I'll be able to line it all up and then just kind of swivel it into position. I'm probably going to have to cut this off and move this over a little bit and shorten it up, but I've got the overall width. There it goes. Just went to blowdown mode. But I've got the overall width to make it happen. So anyway, let's let this finish draining out here. I'm just going to shake the tank and see if I can't rattle some mud and some crap loose out of it, because last time I threw some silt out. But yeah, so we'll get it cut. I don't really have space to kind of have the tripod run for you guys to get the action footage, so hopefully I'll just get it all cut, installed, and then we'll talk about it when it's done, I guess. Whew. It's in there. It ain't pretty. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not real happy with it. But it was just, I mean, you can see it's tight. It's tight. Ideally, these filters would have been in here first, before the pressure tank, and we would have kind of plumbed everything around the filters. But as it is, it worked. Well, we'll see if it works. It's all glued in anyway. When I was making this cut over here, man, it was shaking and rattling that pipe on this backside. I'm hoping nothing, well, pink styrofoam, but I'm hoping none of those connections got somehow broke loose. But I don't really suspect that they did. They didn't get slammed around a whole lot, but just that vibration, because trying to reach back in there with the Sawzall, and I couldn't really stabilize the pipe, so I was just kind of at the mercy of letting it rattle. So anyway, right now it's just set up on these boards. I've got to get some longer 2-inch screws at least. Of course, it looks like it's right between two studs. I should have used a wider backer board, but it is what it is. I'll get just, you know, a few screws in there. It's not quite plumb. You can see it's to the right at the top. Not really sure how that happened, because the inlet and the outlet used to be at the exact same level, and in theory they were at the same level when I built it. I mean, you can see from here to here is the same, but somehow it's cockeyed now. So, oh well. Maybe it did have a little slope to it before and I just didn't notice. So we just got it all glued up, but maybe now you guys can kind of get a better idea of how the whole system is supposed to function. I hope that valve works. It's an old valve. So anyway, the flow now is coming out of the well. We go back in towards the wall here, and then we split, like I said, so it goes 1.25 to 1 inch both ways. Probably overkill. Probably didn't need to. Probably didn't really need to worry about that in hindsight. I think I mentioned earlier in the video, you know, you don't want any restrictions at all, but the pressure tank is actually downstream of it. So the only restrictions that you get is flow from the well to the tank, which is always going to be more than from the tank downstream, essentially, unless I don't even know if it's possible to outrun the well pump with downstream flow. It's not going into the house because that drops to 1 inch. But anyway, yeah, probably overkill, but it is what it is, whatever. We're running quite a bit of volume with my wife, with all of her fish tanks and doing all the cleanouts and everything like that. So probably a little bit more volume than the average household. So I'm okay with having dual filters. It doesn't hurt anything. We spent a little bit of extra money on, you know, the cartridge or the canister and the fittings, and made the assembly maybe a little bit more of a headache, but in general, it's okay. So anyway, we're going back out here. We split to go either direction, and then it reduces. So it reduces to 1 inch here, and it reduces to 1 inch here, so that it's only 1 inch as it goes through the filters. And then coming out the back side of the filters, we step back up from 1 inch, 1.25 inch there and there. So this is 1.25 inch again, going on down the line. The spigot here coming off, this is actually a PVC hose thread adapter. So you'll be able to hook a garden hose right up here to it if you want to. Of course, we have a garden hose bib right here, downstream of the pressure tank. But yeah, this is downstream of the tank, downstream of the filters. So this one is upstream of the filters. Will we ever use it? Probably not. But just thinking, if you were filling up, you know, for whatever reason you were filling a couple thousand gallons of something, and you just didn't want to run all that through your filters because it was a stock tank or, you know, a non-potable water truck or something like that, it doesn't need to go through the filter, so it might as well come out pre-filter. Now that also means that when it runs, it'll run directly off the well pump, because there's a check valve in the pressure tank, so it won't actually take pressure from the tank. So that's something interesting to take into consideration. When we installed the well, the installers told me, you know, the well pump is either designed to be on or off. It's really not designed to be on, off, on, off, on, off, on, off. So if you are running a hose and you're running, like I said, a few thousand gallons, and the well pump just kicks on and runs and runs and runs and runs and runs, they said that's okay. What you don't want is to have it kick on for a minute, off, kick on, off, right? So it's either on or off, which is the idea, because it kicks on, it runs for, you know, a couple minutes, pressures up the tank, then shuts off. So anyway, that gives us a pre-filter outlet, and then the 1.25 inch stub in the back here is also a pre-filter, you know, just a future tie-in if we decide to run a main line out to a barn or something like that, to where we don't need to have filtration again, or where we maybe want to put filters at the downstream end of wherever it goes. So again, it's just an option. May or may not ever use it, but wanted to go ahead and put it in now. It doesn't hurt anything being there. It's just got a cap glued on it. So if we never use it, oh well, it's not that big of a deal. So that's it. The flow goes through the filters. This ball valve will let us cut it off. So in the future, when we go to change the valves or change the filters, we'll be able to cut this valve off right here, which I'll go ahead and do that now. You'll be able to shut that off, and that will hold pressure downstream of that. So your pressure tank will still have pressure on it. You'll have flow onto the house, and the house can run off the pressure tank while someone's out here servicing the filter. So it just wraps around behind. I showed you guys that in the video about the pump house. It just wraps around behind the tank, goes in the bottom there, and then this outlet here is coming out of the pressure tank. Again, hose spigot, and it turns and goes down into the ground there, which goes out to the house. So yeah, fun little project. Upgrade to the system, if you will. Like I said, I still need to go get some screws. I've got some 2 or 3 inch screws, I know I do. And I'll get that board anchored back to the wall a little better. So it's not just forever riding on those boards on the floor. And we should be in business. But it's glued up now. I'm not sure what time it is, maybe about 1 o'clock, 1:30, something like that. So we'll give her a few hours here, and then we'll be back to pressure test. And I hope this time I glued all the fittings and I don't have it blow apart like it did on me last time, because that would sure be embarrassing. Okay, that should be it for now. Well, in the interest of full disclosure, I have to admit, the filters leaked like crazy. And actually, I had 3 or 4 leaks, but actually, what were the worst leaks, there's all my old system that I was so proud of that I gutted. But what actually leaked the worst was these stupid dadgum bushings. So here we go from 1¼ to 1 inch. Now on the old system, I had them bushing down. Here's one here, bushing down. And I don't remember where the other ones were at. They were on the other side somewhere, but obviously there was 2 of them. Well, there's one, bushing down. Anyway, those are what leaked. And when you dry fit them, when you stick them together in the store, even, you can feel there's some play in them. Most PVC fittings, you guys know this, you play in the PVC bin, you stick a couple things together, just playing around, seeing how it looks, and then they're stuck and you can't get them back apart, right? The bushings aren't like that. They just want to fall out. So I'm having to go through and redo this whole stinking thing, which is fine because I really wasn't totally happy with the way it was before. It was really crammed in there, and I'm hoping I can slim it down. I'm taking off all this stuff. I wanted it. I really did. I thought it was great, you know, to have the sort of auxiliary option. But then I thought, long term, realistically, when am I ever going to, you know, hook in an 1¼ line? Duh. The whole point. Glue these things like crazy. These actually are dry fitting a little tighter, that bushing. But I'm actually going to do all that tonight before I do all the rest of the install, just so I can kind of focus on it. So I've got to put 2 of these in. I'm going to change how the system's plumbed up. It's going to be 1 inch directly coming off the wellhead. This is an 1¼ inch. This is 1¼ inch male pipe thread, and I've immediately reduced it down to 1 inch. Because I kind of figured, you know, I mentioned in the last video, the whole idea was going parallel filters, so I didn't have any pressure drops. But then I thought, actually my wife pointed this out, and I said, you know what? This is all pre-pressure tank anyway, so any sort of friction loss from the wellhead to the pressure tank going through these filters, you're not going to notice it from the pressure tank to the house. It doesn't matter. So as long as the tank can fill faster than we can drain it in the house, which it absolutely can, going through 1 inch system, it's going to be able to fill up way faster than we can try to drain it through a 1/2 inch line somewhere in the house. So anyway, yeah, I'm going to drop it down to 1 inch directly off the wellhead, but then it has to expand back up to 1¼ inch just to go into the pressure tank, because that's what it was built on. So this one here coming off the wellhead is dropping up to 1 inch, and then I've just got a coupler here. You got to have a coupler because these bushings fit into the female side of a fitting or a coupler. So I'm going to get the other one glued in here and prime it really good and glue the ever-living crap out of it, and it should hold. Okay, woohoo! We have no leaks this time. So just kind of showing you guys again here how I changed it around. Obviously I did away with all the mess that I had before. Not that any of that was a problem before, but anyway, got it out of here. the pumps are much higher. Before they were sitting, or the filters, before they were sitting right down on the floor. So now they're a lot higher up. Basically, the difference between this and the old system is I don't have this stub going down. I had a T here before that was stubbed down for that 1.25" outlet. What I've done now is I've reduced it to 1 inch here immediately. This is 1.25", it reduces to 1 inch. And this is that stupid bushing, one of them that was leaking. Before I had 4 of them, now I only have 2 because I reduced the whole thing to 1 inch. So this bushing, holding good, glued the ever-living tar out of it. And then again, we go through parallel filters, even though the system is all 1 inch and the filters are 1 inch, we go through parallel filters just so we have a little better filtration. We don't have to change them as often, whatever. So it's all 1 inch all the way through, and then it goes through a 1 inch ball valve here, and then right out the other side of that ball valve, there's an 1.25" coupler with a bushing in it. So we're 1.25" down through that elbow and back into the tank. The point is now I can shut off that ball valve and I can isolate pressure in the tank, which will let the house continue to operate off the pressure tank while I drain this part of the system and change out the filters as needed. Because as soon as the well pump shuts off, we don't have artesian. So as soon as the well pump shuts off, the well actually goes on a vacuum and the fluid level drops. So that won't be an issue. Whenever I go to change the filters, I'll just shut that ball valve on the other side. I'll leave this ball valve open so that lets the whole house run off the pressure tank for the short amount of time that it takes me to flush the filters. So anyway, it's all put together now. I had to do this stupid little jog back. I didn't think about it at the time. When I was gluing up, I forgot that the filters stand out off the wall. That elbow I should have turned and put into the wall. It would have saved me an elbow at least. And because I had to waste an elbow there, then it forced me to have to do this on a slope instead of doing, I would normally have done 290s to come out off the wall, but instead I had to do it out, I had to do it on a funny angle there, which is kind of not quite square, but it worked out. So everything worked out. Thankfully, nothing's dripping or leaking. Thankfully. So hopefully this is now permanent. We got good filters because we are getting tired of having silty, nasty crap in our water. The end.